Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my friend Eric Thompson. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Kathy. I really appreciate you inviting me today.
Oh, I'm so excited to catch up with you. You guys, Eric and I met over 10 years ago, and I've been a big fan of his work and his products and been using them, just so you know, for that long. And I still love them, even though, of course, they're getting better and better and better. I'm still using even some of the stuff from way back. And I'm such a fan. I just want everyone else to know about his work because he is the former co-founder of iWake Technologies, which he can tell you about that, and founder and researcher of Subtle Energy Sciences. And what we'll talk about today is the benefits of using this knowledge of the ethers, the unseen, to have subtle energies help you in every aspect of your life, body, mind, and spirit. So, Eric, let's let people get a little idea of how you got started in this and your story so that they get to love you as much as I do.
Well, thank you. One of the reasons I got into this field was ultimately it was because I was dealing with my own issues, a lot of mental and emotional issues. So it turns out I didn't know this when I was a child because I lived in a small town. We didn't have any, universities there. There weren't a lot of, highly educated people there. And it turns out I was undiagnosed autistic. And so I had all of the symptoms. In fact, the day I was born, this sounds like a line right out of the movie, but my mother she's told me a couple of times that, Eric, you were a loner the day you were born and you've been one ever since. And so that can be a sign of autism along with other symptoms. But essentially what that meant was I did not want to be held. I didn't want to be, cuddled. I didn't even like my mother trying to help me to walk. I was happy being by myself and alone. She said I didn't talk until I was almost 4 years old. Another sign of autism. I had a lot of crazy behaviors where I would rock back and forth violently in my chair. I would get up on all fours in bed at night and rock back and forth. I'd get up in the middle of the night and go. We lived in the country. We had no neighbors. I had no friends out there. And I would sit in the dark and rock in the chair for an hour until I was ready to go back to bed. But because I was undiagnosed, my mother did not know how to handle me. And so that ended up exacerbating the autism with other things. I wound up getting complex PTSD when I was a child. And all throughout school, I was seeing a child psychologist. And one of those child psychologists recommended my mother punish me in a specific way, which was really bad advice. I had the impression at the time that my mother really didn't like me because of that punishment. My father wasn't in my life, so I really didn't have a strong bonding with either of my parents. I'm sure I did have a bonding with my mother. It was probably more of an avoidant style of bonding. And so through school, I had a lot of social challenges. By the time I was in fifth grade, my fifth grade teachers had recommended to my mother that I be taken out of the public schools and put into the local state hospital. They have troubled children there. She chose not to do that. I went on through high school. I had problems in high school. I wound up dropping out. And in my young adult life, I really had a lot of troubles. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which it turns out that was probably misdiagnosed autism, but it looked like bipolar because the anxiety that I would experience from the autism, a lot of intrusive thoughts, would produce really awful depression. And then I could be hyperactive as well. So they interpreted that as bipolar disorder. I was in and out of church my entire adult life looking for answers. I had a very difficult time keeping a job, although I did keep a job for about 3 years early on in adulthood. After that, I had a hard time keeping a job. And I would go in and out of churches looking for answers. Now, I had an early experience when I was 15 and 16 and 17 in martial arts, where I had the pleasure of training in a martial art that had roots in the Shaolin Temple. And in there, I learned a meditation called Yang Qi, and it's designed to build the internal Qi energy. And during that time, I remember we would drive down to Lexington, Kentucky. It was like a 2-hour drive, 2.5-hour drive. We'd drive down there to take these private lessons. And I saw these adult men sitting in lotus position. And when they would breathe, do these breathing meditation, when they would exhale, they'd pop up off the floor. And in retrospect, I understand that was Kundalini energy. But at the time, I had no idea what it was. But I came to understand that Qi was very real. So I spent a lot of my time in young adulthood going in and out of churches, looking for answers. And I'll say I met a lot of, I think, truly remarkable people who tried to help me, but no one had any answers. And eventually, after being homeless on and off for about 5 years, I decided I was going to do everything I could to understand what's going on with me, how to heal myself, how to establish a spiritual practice, which in the beginning, I decided to use a certain form of meditation. And I was going to dedicate myself to healing myself, and that would be, in a sense, my service to humanity, because I had come to understand the non-local nature of reality, and in which when one person's level of consciousness begins to raise, that actually has an effect non-locally, collectively on the collective, and it makes it easier for other people to raise their consciousness. And when more and more people do that, it has a collective effect. And so I had come to the conviction that if I dedicate myself to heal myself, this would actually empower other people to be more empowered to heal themselves and develop more of their potential by virtue of the field. And so I began to do that. And when I first started meditating, I thought, wow, this is fantastic. I was meditating 3 hours a day. I got up to the point of meditating 3 hours a day. I was experiencing a lot of breakthroughs, and I thought, this is it. I'm on my way. And what happened was I went through a period of depression again. It came right back, and it lasted for an extended period of time. And after that, I just felt like I had failed. I wasn't sure that meditation could help me through this. If it could, it was going to take a long time. And I was looking for ways to cut through the chaos, so to speak. And I began experimenting with different ways to do that, to energetically cut through the chaos of mental, emotional experience that can happen in this life. And I began experimenting with various meditation technologies like binaural beats, brainwave entrainment, and yes, subtle energy, to varying degrees of success. I started developing my own brainwave entrainment technology, out of which started a company called iAwake Technologies, which I co-founded with the current owners, John and Pam Dupuis. And in the early days of that, I was also adding to that what I called at the time a biofield technology, which was really subtle energy technology, because I had discovered subtle energy, which defined subtle energy are really these energies related to life force and consciousness that are so subtle they typically cannot be directly detected or measured by typical scientific electromagnetic instruments, because it turns out that in terms of the fundamental structure of the universe, the energies involved therein are not purely electromagnetic. They're much subtler than electromagnetism, but they are related to electromagnetism, and electromagnetism arises from these energies, such that these subtle energies accompany all electromagnetic fields, but not vice versa, which shows that these subtle energies are more fundamental to reality than electromagnetism. And I began incorporating these into the early brainwave entrainment technology that I was developing for iAwake Technologies. We had a lot of success with that. But at some point I grew bored, frankly, with brainwave entrainment. I had become absolutely convinced that subtle energy held potential, that brainwave entrainment and the use of sound, as powerful as it can be, and it is powerful, there's things you can do with subtle energy that just can't be fully done with sound. And so I began to invest all my attention and focus into developing the subtle energy technology. And in the early days of that company, it created a bit of a rift. We had a fourth partner at that time in the early days, and he was not familiar with the science behind this as I was. He also was not having the profound experiences with this that I was, because I was a very sensitive individual. The early versions of this technology were powerful enough that when I would spend days creating the technology, I would get high as a kite. But other people, it turns out that the finished product wasn't necessarily as powerful as the production process, because you're focusing on it for days and days and days, and the energy gets built up. But digital files and such, they tend to tone that energy down. So you have to find other ways to amplify it once it's been captured digitally. And at the time, I didn't fully understand that. So in the early days, not everyone was having as profound an experience with these energies as I was. And so this fourth partner basically thought I was crazy. And he was telling me not to have anything to do this, that it would make us look like pseudoscientists. And it's not because he was more knowledgeable of the science than I was. It was really because he was just concerned about what other people thought. Okay, it was that simple. He was a young guy, good guy, but he didn't get it. And I just told him, I said, well, not only can I not just drop this, all my energy is going to this. This is my life's work. I believe this is what I'm here to do. So eventually, that started working better and better and better. And then I decided to leave the company and do my own thing that was completely dedicated to subtle energy only, no more brainwave entrainment. And I spent a year working on that, and we launched Subtle Energy Sciences in 2015. Go ahead.
Well, so I was Eric and I leased offices in the same building, same floor of a building, same suite. And sometimes I'm a highly sensitive person too. And sometimes I would come in when he'd been up all night working on a project, and you could just walk in. It was glorious. So for people that are highly sensitive, you are going to love Subtle Energy Sciences products. They're easy to use, and they just plain work. And as Eric's told you, his process to capture them, he is very ethical in the way that he produces these products. He makes sure that they do perform. He has beta testers a lot of times for it, and there's a whole bunch of us that are in his fan club that follow everything he does, and every time he has a new product. So, but I want, so that people understand this a little bit more, I want to ask a question, because your work, so subtle energies are the unseen energies that are in the field that are invisible, but your work combines information theory, quantum physics, and energy medicine. Could you talk how they all come together for Subtle Energy Sciences? Because I think that'll help people that may be totally new to them, that could help them understand. Okay.
Sure. So it turns out that space is not empty. In relativity, space is referred to space-time because space and time make up a unified framework. And in the early days, a lot of people do not know this, but I think it was at around 1919 or 1920 that Einstein did a conference in which he stated that space-time without the ether, which he spelled E-T-H-E-R, was unthinkable. So he was still, because he did believe that space had physical qualities. So quantum physics often deals with what's happening at the quantum level, not only in the body and not only in materials, but also in what is often called the quantum vacuum, which would really be space in space-time. And it turns out that is not empty. It turns out that there appears to be a very subtle information of energy and information that's happening in the structure of space-time surrounding all of us, such that all of the information that's available in the universe is available at every point in space. It appears to be stored holographically. So it turns out that, for example, if I think about the energetic signature, if I think about garlic, for example, the universe, the space-time structure in which we exist, it is conscious and it understands precisely what garlic is, what it tastes like, what it feels like, what the energy of it is like. And as soon as I think of the word garlic, space-time itself, including the space-time that permeates our bodies, is able of pulling up a memory an energetic memory of precisely what underlies garlic. Now, in terms of quantum physics and in terms of relativity, there's a thing called particle spin, right? So every substance you can think of, whether it's an herbal substance or some kind of medicinal compound, it has particles that spin. And in the early 1920s, there was a man by the name of Eli Cartan who theorized that not only would gravity affect space-time such that it would curve it, right? Not only would gravity affect space-time, but particle spin would also affect space-time through its angular momentum. So as that particle spins, it's creating angular momentum. And we know that in terms of solid matter, particles are able to stay stationary because they have some kind of mechanism that's allowing them to stay stationary and inert. Although they're still active, they're spinning, but they stay coherent in that particular spin pattern. And what Eli Cartan realized was that spin pattern creates a counterbalancing spin pattern in space-time, so that instead of curving it, it twists it in the opposite direction of the particle spin, thereby creating a counterbalance and keeping inertia in place so that it keeps its form. And it turns out that counterspin is called a torsion field, and that is subtle energy. And that counterbalancing torsion field contains the entire hologram of that substance. So that you can capture these holograms, so to speak, these subtle energetic holograms, as energetic signatures that can be captured digitally. Now, it turns out that when you capture them digitally, because of the limitations of modern recording equipment, that energetic signature is very low amplitude when it's captured. And so we developed different methods of being able to amplify that signature so that once it's captured digitally, it's so powerful that almost virtually anyone can feel it, whether you're accustomed to these kinds of energies or not. The good news is that the more you use these kinds of energies, the more sensitive you become to them. I think that's about it in terms of these torsion fields. They are actually they are kinds of information. So it turns out that torsion acts also as a kind of memory in nature, right? So these memories, again, they can be captured digitally, and that energy can be used through digital files, like a silent audio, where you pull the audio up, you play it on any digital audio player, and it emits these frequencies, which are non-Hertzian frequencies. Okay, they're not traditional frequencies like in the Hertzian range, and they emit through your electronic device straight into your biofield. And this is a real form of what I call digital energy medicine.
Wow. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So how do you decide what's the best delivery system for these digital imprints? Because some of your products are auditory and some are visual. Some are in beautiful art that you create. How do you decide which is the best?
I usually just put them like in our premium products. I'll put the signatures, we'll encode them into all the different types of media, video, audio. Sometimes the audio has actual sound in it. Sometimes it's silent. People who are not as sensitive to the energies tend to say that they feel the energy more strongly when it has sound, because the sound acts as a carrier for it. I personally don't like using sound myself because you always have to listen to something in the background, and I'd rather just have silence. And to me, these energies are so palpable. In my early days, I couldn't understand why other people couldn't sense them, but then I just began to learn through experience that probably one of the reasons I was so sensitive was due to my autism, right? It probably made me more sensitive to these things, and that most people are completely oblivious of these energies going on. This energy transfer is happening all the time in your body,
right?
Happening every time when you go into certain situations, and most people are just completely oblivious to it. And it's another level of reality that when you become aware of it and you learn how to work with it, you can really become more of a master of your health,
right?
More master of your mental, emotional state, and to me, it's so fundamental to reality that it's not even subtle.
Right. Well, that's what I want people to understand as we're going through all these energy changes and these upgrades from the great central sun going through our whole solar system, that this could be the solution for you, because so many of these products, we'll talk a little bit about the product line, but so many of these products are, instead of taking expensive vitamins, you being totally attuned to, I think today I've got a little inflammation, I think I'll use this. I mean, it's amazing the speed at which your body accepts this work and the delivery system. So I want to make sure people understand about the delivery systems. How are your products able to transmit and amplify through phones, computers, or printed images?
Well, it turns out that digital files of all kind can hold this energy, and they'll hold it stably so that it doesn't change. Nothing in the environment changes it. It stays completely stable. And this is the great thing about this kind of work, because it's also programmable. You can program it with conscious, because essentially the energy is conscious. And so once you play the file through any device, laptop, phone, computer, what have you, it emits right through the device, regardless of the device. And again, it emits just emits through the device. It's really that simple. But depending on the device you're using, if it's a phone, for example, or if it's a certain kind of computer, a really big computer, oftentimes they can amplify the energy, because the electromagnetic field that's created by those devices also becomes a carrier for the energy. The energy restructures the electromagnetic field so that it is beneficial to human beings. Oh, and by the way, due to an interesting set of experimental conditions that I kind of accidentally set up over a period of 2 years, last I checked, the electromagnetic grid worldwide was no longer detrimental to human beings. It no longer produces a counterclockwise spin when you douse it using physical radiesthesia. It produces a clockwise spin now. which is with physical radiesthesia, that's an indication that it is empowering your biofield, your energetic field. It's not damaging it. So, but what happens is when you play these files through your electronic devices, they use the electromagnetic field of your device as a carrier as well. But even if you have a small device like an MP3 player, it still emits the energy in there. Any electromagnetic field produced by your device will also be used as a secondary or carrier, and that can amplify the energy. And it just brings it right into your biofield. And it turns out your biofield extends anywhere from, depending on your spiritual development, it extends anywhere from a few feet from your body, a few inches, to miles and miles and miles from your body. Simply by sitting in the presence of an electronic device that's playing one of these, it will emit the energy directly into your biofield.
Perfect. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to see if this is still true, it used to be that you said you could open several copies of an image on your desktop and get an amplified result. Yeah. True still?
Yeah. So like one of the advantages of using these kinds of products on like a big computer is that you can open up multiple versions of, say, Windows Player or whatever, and have like 5 or 6 copies of it playing at the same time, and they'll amplify. And it'll amplify the energy. Now, I've heard people say, well, Eric, all I got to do is go get me an audio editor and put 6 copies of this in there and just play them all at once, and that'll do it. No, it doesn't work that way. And I don't recommend doing it that way. The way it works, if you want to amplify, that's the other cool thing about this technology is you can amplify it to your heart's content, depending on the device you're using. If you're using a laptop or a regular personal computer, including a Mac, you can open up multiple copies of any of your favorite player, multiple copies of the track in your favorite player, and the combined energy will amplify. If you try doing this in an audio editor and playing them all the same time that way, it's not going to work. That's not how it works. I try to tell people this, but they think, oh no, I got to figure it out. I can just play them in an audio. No, it doesn't work that way. Open them up separately. I used to use when I used to amplify the energy, which not something I have to do. When you open them up, I used to use Windows Media Player, and I would just find the file in my folder, right-click it, open in Windows Media Player, and then just do that like 6 times in a row, and it'll open up 6 different instances. And they'll all play silently in the background. Well, here's the other thing. If any of the tracks have sound in them, but you don't want the sound and you want to amplify it because you have 6 tracks playing at the same time, you just turn the volume all down and the energy still comes out. Now, I've had people say, Eric, that's impossible. You're just trying to pull the wool over my eyes. It's not impossible. It works. Okay. How does it work? You need to explain it to me. Look, if I knew precisely why it worked, I'd tell you. What I do know is that digital files hold subtle energy. They do.
Yep.
Why do they? Because they hold energy. If you think about it, sound is energy. All subtle energy is another form of energy. That's all it is.
Yes.
But it's conscious, and it's related to life force, and it can respond to your intention. And it turns out sound can do that too if you program it correctly, but most sound isn't recorded that way. So if sound energy can be recorded stored, and transmitted, so can subtle energy.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so are there differences between analog energy tools like crystals and subtle energy tools in terms of effectiveness or purpose?
Analog, there's a lot of analog tools you can use, right? So the crystals shaped as different shapes, what they call shape power, because it turns out that certain shapes, like, for example, pyramids, the pyramid shape, when it interacts with the surrounding space-time structure, which I like to call the ether, I spell it Aether. Space-time begins to shift and mold itself in accordance to that particular shape, because there is a relationship between the quantum informational exchange in space-time that I call the ether. Federico Fagin calls it quantum informational panpsychism. It's just the idea that the surrounding space is full of this quantum informational exchange, and it's conscious. It begins to restructure itself around specific shapes and to produce reliable effects associated with the pyramid shape. If you use the pyramid shape, I recommend that you use a modified pyramid shape, not a perfect hemispheric sized pyramid shape, because it produces two types of energies, one that is detrimental to human physiology and one that is beneficial.
I see.
You change that structure so that the height of the pyramid in proportion to the base is according to the golden mean, 1.618, then that'll shift it so that it only produces the beneficial quality. And you can see examples of this in Alexander Galad's Russian pyramids in Russia. There was a lot of research done on these.
Yes.
And they all are taller type pyramids that are whose proportions are according to the golden mean. So with crystals, you could, in fact, there's a company in Russia that at one time was selling a golden mean proportioned crystal, quartz crystal, that you could use to condition water and so on. And they're great. The advantage to the digital is you can amplify it and get much stronger effects, much more. Because you can't always amplify analog, right?
Right.
You can amplify digital, which was one of the things I was going for. Also, analog can be very expensive. Digital, turns out the cost for producing it and buying it and using it bring the cost way down. So any type of shape power, crystals are great. It turns out that crystals do have real energetic properties.
Right.
Not just a new age, airy-fairy idea. They have a unique lattice structure within them. And where you have these intersecting points inside this very energetic conductive material called crystal. And so that lattice structure produces these little vortices that then interact with the particular material of the crystal as well as its shape to produce real energetic emissions. So yeah, crystals can be very effective. You can use, for example, one of the products we have is pure white light. You can use that to cleanse any crystal. You would just play it on your computer or your device, crystal near the device. Just intend that the energy cleanse it, leave it there for, really it'll cleanse it in a minute, but you can leave it there for as long as you want. And then the crystal will carry some of the leftover pure white light energy. It'll dissipate over time. It will stay in there indefinitely. You have to recharge it. But and you can do that with water. It'll do that with water, and it'll change the crystalline structure of the water.
Okay. There is Kaleem is on LinkedIn and said, will it keep expanding forever or end someday when the frequency goes out from your digital?
No, when you turn them off, the energy stops. Okay, it doesn't. But what happens is, so like if you turn on, one of the products is called Earth Pulse, and if you play that for, you have that playing in the background for say 3 or 4 hours, and you decide, man, I've had enough. I'm feeling really good. It's getting too much. You turn it off, and no more energy will come out. But what will happen is, because your own field is charged with that energy, the effects will continue for a while throughout the day.
Wonderful.
And then you would just repeat the next day.
Good. Okay. So I want to ask some questions about consciousness and human potential, because I see your work, all of these wonderful products that you've created, as a big boon to our development and our advancement as hopefully going to the new human, which is peaceful. How does your technology assist in raising consciousness or supporting spiritual development?
Well, we have different products. Some of them are more focused towards spiritual development, and some of them are more focused towards practical health concerns. I have so many products, I can't remember them all. So I'm trying to think of a particular product. So one of the older products that's no longer available, which was called Heart Coherence, what that would do, by the way, we decided to discontinue that because I had plans to create a new version of it, and those got stalled. I've since developed a new process for skyrocketing your heart coherence really quite quickly and very easily without having to use any technology whatsoever, except for a process that I've been developing. But what that program did is you just played it, and it built your heart coherence. And from there, natural feelings of love and gratitude and more of your higher potential to move in the direction of developing yourself more spiritually would be activated. So it just depends on the product, right? So pure white light would be wonderful for healing in general, keeping your biofield nice and clean and clear, creating a healing environment. It just depends on what you're looking for. We have something like 34 different products. We used to have twice that many. I decided we had way too many, and some people were overwhelmed by the choice, so I discontinued quite a few of them just to simplify the catalog. And it just depends on the product. But in the future, I do, as I say, I'm developing now, I'm more focused on developing actual modalities and techniques that you can practice instead of using a product, because not everyone's open to that. We have had challenges trying to sell these to the public. For example, I can't really go and put I can't just put the link of one of my products on a Facebook ad, because the nature of the product is so beyond what most people think is possible. A lot of people will just laugh at it and trash it on Facebook. So marketing it has been very challenging. So one of the things I'm doing now is I'm developing modalities and techniques to teach people. But yeah, it just depends on the nature of the product. When I'm able to start producing new products in the future, which I'm not sure when that's going to be, we will be developing more products designed specifically for search methodology.
Well, seriously, you guys, if you go to Subtle Energies Sciences website, which we've got the URL going across here and in the description, and we'll repeat it again. It's subtle.energy. When you go there, you'll see that if you try some of the products, you'll see remarkable difference. That's all I can say. They're truly effective. What I wanted to ask Eric, and of course I don't want you to use names of anybody, but can you share a few transformational stories or testimonials or some ideas of results that people have gotten over the years? Now, of course, you've been doing this for 15 years. I know I have the brain work, and I've definitely used it to focus, and even during all these changes with all the energies to use that. And I know you just changed Catalyst, I think, but that's one of my favorites. But can you share some, besides me and my testimonial, could you share some testimonials or some stories that you want to share?
Sure. Well, the one I'll share is one that we received recently from a gentleman by the name of Sumit. I think it might have been his name. And he basically just said that he's been using audio rejuvenation, for example, which carries the energetic signature of Chinese tonic herbs for building Jing energy, which is your life essence in the body. And he just talked about how it's helped him immensely. To be honest, I don't have any specific other stories coming to my mind. That's the only one I have coming to my mind right now.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us today, exploring energy, consciousness, and human potential with Eric Thompson. Discover Eric's groundbreaking products. Learn more at his website, u.subtle.energy. Please like, subscribe, share. Your channel support helps us bring you more inspiring voices. Until next time, may your path be filled with clarity, harmony, and illumination.